You're watching France 24, and it is time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of French life, hosted by our very own Florence Villeneuve. Hi, Flo.
Hi, Jeannie.
This week, you are going to focus on the French language and the official institution whose mission it is to protect that. That's the Académie Française. Last week, the Academy was in the spotlight for some recommendations it made to simplify the French spelling, but these were recommendations it made back in 1990.
That's right, and for some mysterious reason, a textbook editor, so school textbook editors, decided to implement these recommendations this year. So 26 years later, the idea is to simplify some 2,400 words. For instance, onions, written oignon in French, will lose their eyes, and nénuphar, which is water lily, will ditch the PH and be spelled with an F, as you can see right here. Many hyphenated words as well, like weekend, will turn into one word. So weekend will be written the way it is in English. Now, there was lots of emotion over the fate of a certain accent, the accent circonflexe, that is the famous hat-shaped accent. Now, as you can see here, it will disappear above the vowels I and U in cases where it doesn't change the meaning of the word or the pronunciation. But you can see here, it led to a media storm, essentially on social media. People were outraged. This Twitter user, for instance, is calling the spelling reform a glorification of mediocrity. And you can see, je suis accent circonflexe. This became somewhat of a slogan last week.
Now, I know when this came out last week, I talked about it a lot with my 10-year-old who's in the midst of learning the French language, obviously, and he was thrilled. And I imagine there are many French students who are happy with this news.
That's right, especially when it comes to the dreaded spelling test, the dictée, which from personal experience, I can tell you, it's a nightmare, a very humiliating experience. Now, many teachers and linguists say simplifying spelling is a very good thing because it will make learning French more accessible and less elitist. Let's listen to a linguist explain his point of view.
We have to explain to children that spelling is a set of rules that we agree on. It's evolved over time and it's not set in stone.
Now, we mentioned it earlier, France does have this official institution which is in charge of watching over the French language, the Académie Française. Tell us more about that.
That's right. It's located in the very heart of Paris. The Académie Française, the French Academy, was founded in 1635 by the Cardinal Richelieu, Louis XIII's famous minister. It consists of 40 members elected for life. They're usually famous figures from the world of philosophy, literature, history. Former members include Voltaire, Racine, Victor Hugo, so very famous people. And you can see in these images, they wear a green costume. They even own a ceremonial sword to protect the French language with. And they're informally known as les Immortals, the Immortals. And let's listen to one of these Immortals to see why.
They call us the Immortals, not because we're not going to die, but it's because we have to make sure the French language never dies.
Now, the Academy is France's official authority on the usages, the vocabulary, and the grammar of the French language. But we have to remind people that French is indeed a language that has evolved considerably over the years.
That's right. And one of the major tasks of the Académie Française is to publish the official French dictionary. And check out these figures. Over the past 50 years, the number of words in the Academy's dictionary has gone from 40,000 to 60,000 words. That is a 50% increase in the number of words, just proof that French is a very living language.
French language was pretty stable for several decades, centuries even. And now it's changing at the speed of light. And our job is to observe those changes.
Now, interestingly, there has been this increase in the language, but for decades, the Academy has also been hell-bent on defending the French language and particularly the influence of English on French. In fact, there's even a French word for just that.
That's right, and that is our word du jour, anglicisme. I guess you could say it's an Englishism. It's a kind of an English word that has slipped into the French language, sometimes with a French touch or definitely a French accent. Now, thanks to globalization and modern technology, these Englishisms, these anglicismes, have really taken over, well, some would say taken over the French language. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, of course. But for years, the Academy has tried to stop this English invasion, recommending French words instead. For instance, the word email, which is commonly used in French, well, the Academy recommends people to use the word courriel. Not very many people use that word, it must be said. But what's interesting is in 1994, the French Parliament, voted into law something called the loi tout bon, which was to ensure the dominance of French, particularly in advertising. And so by law, slogans or texts used in advertising, if they're in English, they have to be translated, usually with a little asterisk. But what's interesting is over time, the authorities and the Academy Academy have become a little bit more lenient, or open, as they would say here. And let's listen to one of these Immortals explaining how they become more lenient.
We take into account the modern use of our language when we establish our definitions. For instance, I just got out of a session about the definition of the English word outsider in French, so we're not on a witch hunt against English words.
Now, it's really interesting because when you look at other Francophone countries, for example, like Canada, they are much stricter when it comes to the use of English words, anglicism.
That's right. The province of Quebec is even more hardcore than France when it comes to protecting French. The Bill 101 of Quebec's 1977 Charter of the French language created very strict rules to keep English out. Rules that are enforced by language inspectors. For instance, on signs, French must be predominant and larger, 2/3 larger than other languages. You can see even the stop sign says arrêt and not stop.
Like it does in France.
In France, it says stop, exactly. Now, this is some examples of what you can see in France these days. English is everywhere, including in the translation of English movies into French. So this is the English version, The Hangover. It's not gueule de bois, as it would be in French, but very bad trip. And one of my favorite examples is a movie that was known as No Strings Attached in English. And if we can take a look at the French language version, it's a lot more explicit as to what the movie's about. Sex friends. So I'm not quite sure exactly what the Académie would say about these movie posters, but at least they have no accent circonflexe in them. So there's not going to be any problem there.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Florence Villeminot, and for that look at the very intricate, very complicated French language. Now, don't forget, if you have any questions about France, its language, or the country in general that you would like us to explore here in French Connections, you can always feel free to tweet Flo at Flo Villeminot. You can also check out our website. The address, of course, is france24.com.